So the plan was to have a 2K video come out today, but we all can't see the future, and sometimes things happen we don't see coming, so we're just going to talk about the NBA playoffs instead, and, well, the second round is here. The first round was pretty cool. We had some entertaining series, and hopefully we get the same in the second round. I already spoke on the OKC Thunder and the San Antonio Spurs, but the too long didn't read version of that was I picked the Spurs in 7. I don't think OKC has enough firepower, but based on Game 1, that might be quicker than 7 games. I don't know. As for the other series going on right now, we have the Cleveland Cavaliers against the Atlanta Hawks. I'm probably going to go with Cleveland in 5 games in this one. Atlanta is definitely better than Detroit, but the thing with the Hawks is, of course, they don't have a star player on the level of LeBron James, because he's still one of the best players in the league. And also, their defensive mentality is to collapse on the ball handler when they drive inside, and they'll bring like 2 or 3, sometimes even 4 defenders on you, and as a result, they gave up the most 3-point attempts in the regular season. I don't think that's going to be very successful against Cleveland because LeBron James is so good that bringing 2 or 3 guys on him is sometimes just not enough because that's how good he is. But also, all Cleveland has to do is put like 2 or 3 shooters with LeBron at all times, and I don't think Atlanta has much of a chance because LeBron's still one of the best passers in the league. I mean, you put LeBron out there with Kyrie Irving, Kevin Love, and J.R. Smith, and Dellavedova, and Richard Jefferson has hit some open shots. Shumpert's not bad. I don't think Atlanta has much of a chance. I guess the only interesting thing could be if Kevin Love has a hard time defending Al Horford and Paul Millsap, but I don't think that's enough to really sway this series. I think Cleveland wins this in 5 games. There's also Portland against Golden State. Warriors don't have Steph Curry. I don't think that makes much of a difference. I think Golden State wins that in probably 5. I'll give Portland 1 game just to be nice. And then, of course, I already mentioned OKC and San Antonio. But we also have Toronto and Miami, and this is probably the most interesting series of this round, in my opinion. Raptors did not look good to close out the Indiana Pacers, and in fact, the last 2 minutes of that Game 7 were really ugly. Both sides. I mean, Toronto, they went into their classic Dwayne Casey isolation ball in the last 2 minutes, which is always beautiful. Kyle Lowry just didn't have a good series. He lost his aggressiveness towards the end there, passing up shot opportunities, but he also just missed some shots that he normally makes. So here's hoping he just plays better against Miami. Goran Dragic is not known as a defensive point guard, so here's hoping. But also on the flip side, Miami looked pretty damn good in Game 7 against Charlotte. They just blew them out. It wasn't even a contest by the time the fourth quarter started. And there's a few interesting things with this series in my opinion, one of which being Hassan Whiteside. It wasn't much of a challenge for him against Charlotte, which doesn't really surprise you when they have Al Jefferson and Cody Zeller or Frank Kaminsky, guys who aren't really physically able to match up with Whiteside. But Valanciunas, on the other hand, he's going to make Whiteside just a little bit more uncomfortable. He's going to bang into him, and it's actually going to affect him and things like that. So I think just Whiteside grabbing every single rebound and finishing at the rim, that's just going to be a little bit more difficult for him, so that's cool. I don't know if that's an advantage for Toronto, but I think it's something we have to notice. Another interesting part will be how valuable DeMarre Carroll is, because he's there for his defense and to be at least good enough on offense when it comes to stretching the floor and cutting to the basket, things like that. His defense didn't really make much of a difference on Paul George, but no one on Miami is as good as PG. And I think DeMarre Carroll's defense will be a bit more valuable in this series because Miami has a lot of good wings. I mean, there's Dwayne Wade, Luol Deng, Joe Johnson, Justice Winslow, Justin Richardson, if I said his name right. There's a lot of wings on Miami, and if someone gets hot and hits a couple of shots in the row, you can put DeMarre Carroll on them, and, well, they're not going to be as good as Paul George, so I think that's something. I'll also say I don't know if Luis Scola can play a single minute in this series because Miami, they play a lot of small ball 4. They usually start with Joe Johnson at power forward or Luol Deng. Scola has no chance in hell of defending those guys, which means Patrick Patterson's going to be seeing a lot of minutes, which he should because I think he's good. I also think James Johnson of Toronto Maybe he should be playing because he can play some defense and he could be another defender when DeMarre Carroll's not in the game, or maybe you could play them both at the same time, although you might be risking losing something on offense. And I really think from a talent perspective, these two teams are not far off, and I think it's going to be interesting to see what these two head coaches do in terms of matchups, because there is definitely some versatility on both of these teams. I mean, I just mentioned DeMarre Carroll, the defense he can play. Justice Winslow is a very good perimeter defender as well, and if DeRozan or Lowry start getting hot, well, here comes Justice Winslow. Luol Deng can play defense as well, and I just mentioned the talent isn't too far off with these teams, but gut feeling is saying Miami. I think Miami wins this thing in either 6 or 7 games, and a big part of this is, I focus so much on the X's and O's of players that I forget that sometimes dudes are just a little starstruck, not exactly ready for the moment. Listen, Toronto, the fact that Indiana even took them to 7 games is alarming, and especially how that fourth quarter in Game 7 went, on top of the history of the Toronto Raptors, and just, Kyle Lowry looking a bit tentative, and DeMar DeRozan not having the best series in the world. On the flip side, did we see the shot that Dwayne Wade hit against Charlotte at big moments in that series? Like, Dwayne Wade's still one of the best players in the league in the fourth quarter. So, I think I'm going to have to go with Miami because I just think they have more guts than Toronto, which is something I usually don't pay attention to, but when these two teams are pretty close in terms of talent and matchups and things like that, that's the sort of thing that can really sway the series, so I think Miami is going to be moving on to the Eastern Conference Finals, and I don't remember what the hell else I said about all the other series. That's going to do it. I'm done.